Welcome everyone to DCYOPresents, our weekly in-depth interview with DC Youth Orchestra program artists about what inspires them. I am Liz Schergen, your host and the Executive Director of DCYOP. On today's show, we are joined by DCYOP Principal Conductor, Richard Scerbo. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Liz.
Richard has curated a great listening list for us today. We really want DCYO Presents to be an interactive experience, and so we will be answering some of our viewers' questions throughout the show. If you have a question or comment for Richard, please type it into the chat box accessible at the bottom of your screen. As a note, our audience is mostly children and families, so please be kind and thoughtful. Arles, say hello, Arles.
Hi, everyone.
DCYOP's Assistant Director of Operations will monitor our chat box. So let's get started. Richard, tell us, how are you connected to DCYOP?
Hi, Liz. It's great to be here this afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show today. I have been with DC Youth Orchestra since probably around the year 2000, when I first came to teach bassoon during the summer camp, summer chamber music and band program during the summer. And currently I'm the principal conductor and rotate with two of my great colleagues, Ken Whitley and Evan Solomon, conducting the youth orchestra and youth philharmonic.
I had no idea that you were the bassoon instructor. That's actually how I started with DCYOP. Is I started as the bassoon instructor, summer 2013.
So that's one of the things we share in common, which is the bassoon in our background. So I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, including I think we have played together bassoon on maybe one or two occasions.
That's right, we have. I think it was a Beethoven 5. That's right. Or 8, something like that. One of the Beethovens.
Which, speaking of which, to start us off, I'd love to show us a video of you acting. And so I believe we have the Youth Philharmonic, your most recent performance with them. So tell us, what are we about to see?
I think this is the youth orchestra from December. And this is the Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And this is when I subbed in fairly at the last minute for Maestro Whitley, who I know was on the show before. And this was pretty exciting and a pretty, it's always a great opportunity to conduct one of the monuments of music like Beethoven's Fifth.
So Evan, let's hear some. That was great. We had some comments that the kids sounded great, and they really, really did. That was
a great concert. Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, and so you mentioned before you're a bassoonist. That's one thing we have in common. Yeah. So when did you start studying music, and did you start on the bassoon?
Yeah, great question. So I actually started on the saxophone in 3rd grade, and I remember coming home from elementary school with those forms that you fill out like I want to play this instrument. And it had different, you can play the violin if you're this many years old, or you're in this grade, or you can play the oboe. I remember the oboe you could only play if you were in 5th grade. Anyway, I came home with 3rd grade and wanted to play the saxophone, and I played alto saxophone through 6th grade. And I remember I wasn't really having that much fun. I wasn't having a lot of fun playing sax in the band. And I remember the last day, it was the last day of class in middle school band in 6th grade. My band teacher, Mr. Hawthorne, said, well, we need some clarinets or someone that plays the saxophone if they'd switch to playing bassoon. And I thought, I don't even know what the bassoon is, but that sounds fun. So I was, first day of 7th grade, I was knocking on his door saying, what's that thing called the bassoon? Let me have it. I want to play it. So he gave me the bassoon case, and he didn't even know how to put it together. He said, go into my office, and here's a like a Rubank elementary book, figure out how to put it together. And here's a reed. So like tootle around on the reed. And so that's how I got to play the bassoon. And one of the most interesting things, and I think one of the things that really made an impact and put me on this pathway to music was I brought the bassoon home, and I was visiting my dad, and my dad's neighbor was out at his mailbox, and my dad was like, oh, Richard, tell Bill Thayer what that thing is you brought home from school today. And I said, oh, Bill, I brought home a bassoon. And he said, no kidding, I'm a bassoon teacher. So he said, why don't you come over and I'll give you a trial lesson, or tell you how to at least put it together. So pretty much right from that moment, I had started taking bassoon lessons with Bill Thayer, and a great public school teacher and my private bassoon teacher. So that really set me on the path to bassoon. Big shout out to all our friends and amazing colleagues in public education, public music education, who are doing great work. Without them, I certainly wouldn't have been where I am in music.
It's so funny that you say that, because my story was somewhat similar in the sense that I also started through my public school music program. I was in 4th grade, and my mom is a violinist, and she really wanted me to pick the instrument that I most identified with. And so we listened to the old version of Disney's Fantasia. This is before the 2000-something version came out. And I picked out the sound of the bassoon without ever knowing what it looked like. So I was with you on that one. And I showed up at the musical instrument fair, and I was like, hey, I want to play the bassoon. And they said, no, you want to play a nice instrument like the flute or the And I started crying. And so my mom went down to the woodwind teacher, Deborah Butterfield, and she said, I know this is going to sound strange, but my daughter actually wants to start playing the bassoon. And she was like, yes, we usually have to convince people to play bassoon.
Yeah.
So ironically, when I was in high school, I did learn saxophone as kind of an extracurricular project for my band program. But, I'm very fortunate and very grateful, but it's just wild that you happen to live next to a bassoon teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, full disclosure, I mean, my parents were separated, so I didn't walk next door for my lesson, but it was pretty darn close. It was pretty phenomenal.
So you started a band program. When was your first real memorable orchestral experience?
Yeah, my first orchestral experience was actually quite memorable for a number of reasons. So I grew up in Anne Arundel County, for all those in the DC area, and we have something called All County Orchestra. And I remember I got to 9th grade, and my bassoon teacher said, Richard, you should audition for All County Orchestra. And I said, okay, I don't know what that is. I have to go play an etude. And I'd only played in bands, at that point. So, and my bassoon teacher, who I mentioned, Bill Thayer, taught many bassoon players, many student kids in the area. And so I, trotted to Annapolis and played this audition and waited a few weeks, and the results come out. And lo and behold, I was principal bassoon of the All County Orchestra, and I had beaten out some of the more experienced and upperclassmen, juniors and seniors. And I didn't even know what I was getting into. I really did not. I had no idea. So we show up, and the first program, the program was Mozart's Overture to the Magic Flute. And also for Evan, who I know is in the audience, that program also included the Kalanikoff First Symphony and Smetana's Three Dances from the Bard and Bride. Anyway, we got to the first rehearsal with the Overture to the Magic Flute, and I know you know this, Liz, but there's some little duets with the clarinet and bassoon and flute and bassoon in the second half of that piece, and they were written in tenor clef, and I couldn't read tenor clef at that point. For those of you listening, the bassoon is traditionally written in the bass clef, but its upper register is written in tenor clef. And so I was completely just like a fish out of water. Not only couldn't read the music, but I was in this orchestral experience way over my head. And I had to step aside and let one of the upperclassmen play principal on that concert. But as traumatic in a way as that concert was, the thrill of like sitting in an orchestra, the thrill of like being surrounded by that type of music was really indelible, left an indelible mark on my memory. And it was something I wanted to come back to year and year again. So Magic Flute was definitely a piece that I certainly remember. And we had a chance to do it actually last semester with the youth orchestra. I had a chance to conduct that with them. And I think that was the overture to the program that we just saw with Beethoven's Fifth.
Wow, that's a great story. So we're going to play a little clip of Magic Flute Overture right now. And for all of our listeners today, we'd love to hear, what was your first memorable orchestral experience? So type it in the chat. We're really interested to know. This is Richard's first experience. What was yours? that was great. We heard there's a lot of memories in chat. It's interesting. A lot of people had their first experience with the DC Youth Orchestra program. In fact, and so
Scerbo.
I'm glad that we are here to provide that experience. And interestingly enough, my mom, who is watching this episode and has watched every episode, just typed in
Liz's mom.
that her first experience was actually playing the same piece that my first experience was, which was Mozart's Jupiter Symphony. So it's funny how connected we are in this musical world, how large yet small it can seem sometimes.
You know,
So,
I think that there's something really, the repertoire that we all encounter in youth orchestras, and while it has been diversifying over the last couple of years, there is this sort of currency of having shared the same pieces that kind of pop up in youth orchestras around the country. And you can remember, oh yeah, I remember doing that overture, or I did that symphony, which are, and the reason they're done with youth orchestras is because they kind of fit the instrumentation or the level of playing, but it does kind of create this nice body of work that you can kind of share and say, oh yeah, I did that piece in youth orchestra for the first time.
We actually have an interesting story from Elise Sharp, who was our guest last week and also a fellow conductor at the DC Youth Orchestra program. She said, Mr. William Starnes at DCYOP playing Ode to Joy. We sounded so bad, he stopped us right in the middle of the concert, turned around to the audience and said, I'm sorry, they can play better than that. We started, and we got a standing ovation when it was over. It was actually a great experience, believe it or not. And so that's, I think, probably something that you've had to do as a conductor is make a decision once a performance has started, whether or not you're going to continue. Have you ever had to stop a performance before?
That's not a fair question, Liz.
Well, answer it how you may.
I have had to stop a performance before, and those are some of the, those are memorable experiences, but not for the reasons that you want them to be. There's a story of a conductor in town, and I think what gives me heart is that even with professional orchestras, I've seen them stop and start over again. And there was a famous performance that took place a number of years ago at the National Cathedral of Vaughan Williams' First Symphony, the C Symphony, and starts with giant brass and chorus. And this conductor started the piece, I think 3 or 4 times, and turned to the audience and said, the opening of this piece is just so amazing. We have to get it right. And that was with a professional orchestra. So it happens to all of us.
It does. And it goes to show you that there's no such thing as a perfect performance, and that as much as we rehearse and practice in our own right, that every experience is different, and sometimes things go unexpected. But that's one of the great joys about being a musician, is that nothing is ever as you may expect it to go.
That's right.
So you, as part of our preparation for today's show, I asked you to come up with some of your favorite recordings. And the next recording you selected, you actually had to dig through your CD archives to find. Tell us about it.
So this was kind of fun. You had asked me for pieces that were meaningful to me. And I have this memory. So when I was growing up, we didn't have Spotify or Apple Music. You had to listen to music on cassette tapes or CDs. And I would go to the public library and dig through their classical section to check out CDs. And I think you were only allowed to check out like 5 CDs at a time. And I would go to our little tiny local public library, and all the CDs of all the famous pieces, all the Beethovens and the Brahms and the Schumanns and those were always checked out. So what was left were really random stuff like Ives symphonies and music of Michael Torke. And this album I remember finding in the library, and it is a wind quintet, an album of wind quintet music by the group Ensemble Wien Berlin. And these are the principal woodwind players of the Berlin Philharmonic and Vienna Philharmonic. And when I heard this the first time, I had never played in a woodwind quintet. I didn't, in college, that would be my primary chamber music experience, would be playing in woodwind quintets. But when I heard this album of music and heard just the beauty of woodwind playing for the first time, it really struck how just how gorgeous these instruments are. Sorry to say to all my high school colleagues at the time playing clarinet, flute, and oboe, but when I heard these players, I was like, wow, this is incredible music. So I think the piece that we have here is the first movement of Paul Taffanel's Woodwind Quintet. For all the flutists out there, you may know that name. Paul Taffanel is a very famous flutist, teacher at the Paris Conservatory, and wrote many etudes. But he wrote this amazing Woodwind Quintet that I think is just so fun and so French. And I went on to play it a number of times as a bassoonist.
So for everyone who watched, Richard actually had to upload that to YouTube. So you are amongst the first people to view that on YouTube.
Yeah, for some reason I have this CD and it's not on Spotify and it's not on Apple Music. I can't find it anywhere. So don't tell Sony Music, but I ripped it off for this today. I saw one of the questions pop up from Christopher asking what my favorite woodwind piece is. This piece is really special just because I have memories of who I played it with and like playing in woodwind quintet for the first time. In the woodwind quintet world, I think I'd have to say the Ligeti Wind Quintet is a pretty special piece. I think you'd agree, Liz. It's really special and uses the instruments in a completely different way and a completely different sound world. You know, chamber music, that's the thing about chamber music is sometimes it's about the piece and sometimes it's about the people that you're playing with. And so a lot of times when I think about a piece that I really enjoyed, the piece was part of it, but the people I was playing with also made it exciting. So I had a really incredible semester at University of Maryland playing the Arthur Berger Woodwind Quartet. and you know, not something that you would just go to off, like, you know, for fun, but it was fun to learn a new piece like that.
That's great. And you know, most of our students play chamber music in addition to being in an orchestra, but in fact, some people have gone so far to make a career out of being in a woodwind quintet. And so for all of our students that are on today, I encourage you to check out the Imani Winds, because one of your DCYOP alums, Toyin Spellman Diaz, is the oboe player in that group. And so you can actually see a DCYOP alum who's made a career out of playing in a woodwind quintet, which there aren't a ton, but it has been done.
That's right.
So when you graduated high school, did you want to become a bassoonist? What happened next in terms of your musical career?
Yeah, so I went into college. I started at the University of Maryland studying bassoon, but I primarily went to college because I wanted to do music education, and I think that was really from having so many wonderful music educators that I, you know, had come through middle and high school with, that I really wanted to be a part of that world. And as I was at the University of Maryland, my interest shifted several times, but at the end of my undergrad, I got the conducting bug, so to speak, and wanted to start an orchestra so that I could have conducting experience. So a good friend of mine at the time, we put together a chamber orchestra, and he was interested in helping because he wanted to play concertmaster, and I wanted to put it together so I could get conducting experience. And we formed a group called the Philharmonia Ensemble, and that lasted for 4 years, 2 years during my junior and senior year of undergrad, and then the 2 years that I was doing my master's degree in conducting at the University of Maryland. And I think I'll mention this when we get later in the show, when we get to the piece, but thinking back to that experience and thinking back to my undergrad music making experience, those people that you are with, the people that you are in youth orchestra sitting with right now next to you in youth philharmonic or youth orchestra, those will be your musical colleagues for the rest of your lives. I had people that I played in youth orchestra with that we ended up at college together. And so it's a really special, that's one of the special things about having a life in music.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you grew up in Maryland and you live in Maryland now, and
Right.
in a slightly different part of the state than where you grew up, but even if you grew up in Maryland and end up in California, I promise you that whoever you meet through youth orchestra, it's really possible they may follow you either through college, summer music festivals, which we'll talk about in a little bit,
Yeah.
or in the professional world. In fact, there are teachers at DCYOP that I went to youth orchestra with outside of Chicago. So it is a very small world, and it is true that who you may be sitting next to now, you may see for the rest of your life. So when you graduated, you did a variety of different things. You still do a variety of different things, from being a conductor to an arts administrator to a music educator. So the next video we have is actually of you conducting a youth group, but it's not the DC Youth Orchestra program. Can you tell us a little bit about the next video we're about to see?
Yeah, so this is the video from Pacific Music Institute, is that right? Great. So when I was an undergrad, I had the fortunate experience to have when I was in graduate school, I had the fortunate experience to be a graduate assistant, which for those of you listening, that's a way that it's basically work study. So in return for a certain number of hours per week, I was doing administrative work for the National Orchestral Institute at the University of Maryland. And in last summer, the National Orchestral Institute formed a partnership with one of Liz's colleagues and another great regional youth orchestra, the Hawaii Youth Symphony in Honolulu. And so the National Orchestral Institute, myself and several students went to Hawaii to be teaching fellows in their summer music academy. And the video that you'll play next is me conducting the faculty orchestra with some of the teaching fellows and students mixed in. And the piece you'll hear is Respighi's The Birds, Gli Uccelli. And this is the third movement. And Respighi wrote a number of pieces that were all based on works by Baroque or classical composers. And so this piece is about 5 different movements, but we'll hear the third movement. And this is music based on Rameau, actually. So this is a short little excerpt from The Birds.
I love that you included that video because we actually got to see you conduct. Oftentimes, videos are shot from behind where you may get an occasional video of the conductor conducting, but we actually got to see you in action.
Yeah, and we had the sound dubbed over it, so you're not hearing the sound from the video behind the orchestra. So yeah, it was a really fun concert to conduct out in Hawaii.
So speaking of summer music festivals, after you graduated college, you got a job with a very well-known one called the National Orchestral Institute. So tell us about the National Orchestral Institute and what you do there.
So the National Orchestral Institute, or NOI as we call it for short, because it's quite a mouthful otherwise. NOI is a summer orchestral academy for musicians aged 18 to 28. And we bring students from all around the country for 4 weeks of study at the University of Maryland. And each week is structured essentially like a professional orchestra, in that each week you have a different conductor, an entirely different program. And then we bring in an entirely different set of faculty each week to lead master classes and lead sectionals. So very much like at DC Youth Orchestra, how we have sectionals for woodwinds and brass and violins, we do something similar at NOI. And I have been the director now of that program for I'm in my 6th year. And before that, I was the assistant director and general manager. So this was really a wonderful program that means a lot to me. I came up through the ranks of it, so to speak, at the University of Maryland. I started as a grad assistant. And at that time, my conducting teacher and mentor, Jim Ross, was leading the program. And I had the great opportunity to work with him for a number of years, supporting his work. And now NOI is doing great things. We unfortunately had to cancel this summer, like many summer festivals out there. But we're looking forward to a bright summer next year when we can all get back to performing. So I think the next video is a little bit of an overview of just what it is we do at NOI, and you'll get to hear a little bit of the orchestra in this video, and then you'll get to hear more orchestra at the end of at the end today.
The experiences that the students get here at NOI are very realistic to the real world. They're going to be doing exactly those things when they are a professional musician.
All of our programming at NOI is focused first and foremost creating a well-rounded musician.
You get to work with a lot of different people, meet a lot of friends and colleagues that you'll be working with forever, but you get a lot of time to explore your own options and your own career development.
I think it was really interesting that we had a concert 2 days after we got here.
You're bringing in the best people from all the great conservatories and universities around, and we're all coming together.
They play at such a high level that it's hard to believe that they're just students.
This is what the profession is. Orchestras are doing a new concert every single week.
Master classes and excerpt classes and mock auditions and private lessons provide the students with real world knowledge that's hard to get.
Working with professional conductors on a weekly basis is demanding, but also very rewarding.
They're recognizable names, they're big shots.
It's been really great to kind of get their experiences and see how they work with students.
Having the opportunity to ask questions, to receive feedback from people that are doing what you want to do is invaluable.
We did the Naxos recording, which was unbelievable.
To have recording experience at a festival is amazing.
My favorite part about the National Orchestral Institute and Festival is the access that we have to the faculty and staff at all times.
My favorite part about teaching at the National Orchestral Institute and Festival is my interaction with the students.
I feel their energy and it feeds me.
And if I can play a role in inspiring them to be even better, there's nothing better than that.
So that's a pretty great introduction to NOI. And so talk about when it typically takes place, and if our viewers wanted to actually go and hear a performance, when they might hear, and understanding that next year we're going to have a really wonderful, beautiful program to share.
Sure. It typically takes place the first 4 weeks in June every year. And even though we're not having the festival live this summer, we are rebroadcasting concerts every Saturday night in June. So the music that you heard intertwined through that video, Dvorak's 8th Symphony, that was from last summer, and we'll be rebroadcasting that during the first Saturday in June. And there'll be sort of a live panel discussion similar to what we're doing here today, Liz, that will precede the concert, and then we'll play the full Dvorak's 8th Symphony. That that video is really special because it highlights some of the pieces that I'm really proud of that we've done at NOI in the last couple of years. Not only do we have an amazing group of faculty and conductors that come together, but we've also had the opportunity to work with a number of noted composers over the last couple of years. And there was a scene there I should have pointed out where you saw a lady standing at the piano and a conductor conducting. Last summer we had the opportunity to record a work by Joan Tower. And she's just this incredibly amazing composer, one of the first women composers to really break through the national scene and write for major symphony orchestras. And she's had a really distinguished career. And we had the opportunity to work with her in preparing for our 5th Naxos album. So many of you may have heard of the record label Naxos, but about 5 years ago, NOI started a partnership with this record company. And so each summer, not only do we do live performances, but we record an album from one of our concerts. And so we'll have one coming out with some of Joan Tower's works on it this fall. And I will brag just a little bit that 2 years ago, our album was nominated for a Grammy Award in the category of Best Orchestral Performance. So we were up against this ridiculous slate of orchestras. I woke up, I didn't even know, I thought it was a joke actually, and I wasn't even following the Grammys. And the conductor, David Allen Miller, texted me and he said, "Did you see the news?" And I said, "No." And so we had our album that we put out that year was in the running for a Grammy up against the Pittsburgh Symphony, the Boston Symphony, San Francisco Symphony, and Seattle Symphony, and then us, and then a student orchestra. So it was really thrilling. I had the opportunity to go to the Grammy Awards in Los Angeles, which was quite an experience. I actually really enjoyed it. The classical awards don't take place live on the televised series, but it was still fun regardless.
That's a pretty amazing story, and it's, I think, pretty unique for a student orchestra to receive a nomination like that. And it's a testament to the great work that you do putting together that festival every year, which is no easy feat.
Well, I think it's also worth noting, I mean, there are summer festival opportunities. There's so many summer festival opportunities for students of all ages and all levels of playing to participate in. And really using the summer, and we'll say this summer is an exception because we can't use this summer, but for all the students that are listening and parents, the summer is such an amazing opportunity for us to really focus on playing our instruments and getting better at our craft, getting better at our music. And we don't always, I know how demanding homework and rehearsals and sports and everything is during the year, but summer's an opportunity to seek out a place, whether it's NOI, whether it's the chamber music program at DC Youth Orchestra, whether it's Brevard, whether it's Eastern Music Festival. There's so many opportunities really to further your musical growth, and summer's a great time to do that.
So if our students want to listen in on one of those live broadcasts, how do they do that?
Great question. So first and foremost, I'd love it if you followed our Facebook page or our Instagram page, the National Orchestral Institute's social channels, but we'll be posting those on our website at noi.umd.edu. We'll have all of our upcoming concerts there. And we're just now developing what our online content will be for June. We're developing some master classes. Even though we've canceled the in-person festival, we're creating some educational opportunities online, just like we are doing here for DC Youth Orchestra program. And some of the reason I'm bringing this up is because some of those online opportunities will be open for people to observe. So we will have hopefully some master classes and some other discussions like we're doing here that will be open for anyone to join.
And we have a question in the chat that I think will help clarify. What age are the students in NOI, and what age are the opportunities for this summer?
Great. So NOI is open to students ages 18 to 28. Just after high school, or you can audition as long as you're 18, you can audition. So we, on occasion, do have a number of high school, recently graduated high school seniors that participate in the program. For any of the public opportunities that we'll put online this summer, there's no age limit to participating in those.
So I think we have a little taste of what one of those broadcasts may look like in another video here. So tell us, we're going to hear a little snippet of Mahler 5.
So there's another first for this broadcast today. This was a little bit of a montage of selections from Mahler's Fifth Symphony. This was from last June 2019, with the conductor Michael Stern. And Mahler is one of those composers that really uses the orchestra in a way that he's like the bodybuilder of orchestra writing. I mean, every section's muscles are flexed, and this piece is incredibly muscular. It has enormous moments for trumpets, for brass in particular. Brass players love Mahler symphonies, but it's incredibly virtuosic. And so these are three, if we can hear the whole excerpt, and I think we might have time to, we'll hear a little bit from the first movement with the famous trumpet call that is on many people's excerpt lists. And then we'll hear some of the slow movement, the adagietto, very, very heartfelt moment in the piece, written for strings only and harp. This movement, so everyone else gets to take a little bit of a breather. And then the very end of the video, we have the finale of the piece. So this is Mahler's Fifth Symphony from NOI 2019.
That was pretty great. They're pretty talented.
I'm not gonna lie, I love listening to that. they just really put their heart and soul into the music. And I noticed someone early on in the chat mentioned how they were all moving to the music, and that's something that I really love to see when you get to that point and you watch a whole orchestra just kind of breathe together. You're no longer just one player breathing. You're an entire section or your entire ensemble that's breathing together. So I saw someone ask, we had about 10 cameras, I think, in the room for that. Not all of them were human operated. Some of them were just set up for static shots, and some of them had operators. But we knew that this was going to be a thrilling piece to showcase, and so we wanted to make sure to capture it.
So I hope everyone who's watching today tunes in for these broadcasts. They sound fantastic, and that's, I think, something that during this period of time is listening to a lot of music and being able to take a step back and just experience all the beauty and joy. And, you know, I think Mahler's actually been, what's interesting, Mahler's been a connective theme amongst all of these DCYO presents. So I'm glad this is, I think, the first time we heard Mahler's Fifth Symphony. But I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to talk about what got you your other Grammy nomination.
Oh, right.
As a conductor. So tell us a little bit about Inscape, the evolution of that group, and how it led you to a Grammy nomination.
So earlier on in the show today, you heard me mention that I started a chamber orchestra called Inscape. It's called Philharmonia Ensemble as an undergrad. And when myself and a number of friends, including DCYOP's artistic director, Evan Solomon, who was a performer in that group, when we graduated from the University of Maryland, we decided that we wanted to keep that group going. And so we changed the name, and we were no longer a student group, and the name of that group is Inscape. And we were performing for a number of years, and it's quite a complicated story, but we found ourselves with a recording contract to record some of the commissioned works, some of the works that were written for Inscape. And I remember, kind of like the Grammy nomination for NOI, I remember when Evan and I first received this email to do a recording, we also thought it was a hoax. We weren't sure what was happening. And we found out that it was real. And fast forward a year or so, and we found ourselves in a recording studio doing an album of works that were written for us called Sprung, and the album's called Sprung Rhythm. And I think this next piece is a clip from that album.
That's pretty great, and it's a pretty wonderful album. I know that my husband likes to listen to that quite often, and he's not someone who comes from a very musical background, so appeal to it. What what does Inscape normally play? What is their kind of focus? And talk to me a little bit about what the size of the group is, what the composition looks like, and what it's like to conduct.
Well, interesting. Liz, I was just thinking when we were talking about Mahler, that you actually performed with us in a performance of Mahler's Fourth Symphony for chamber ensemble. So Inscape is a flexible roster ensemble. So we perform everything from chamber music, from solo to chamber music, up to groups that are much larger, 20 or 30 members at most. We primarily perform in a configuration that looks most like a sinfonietta. So that's single woodwinds and single strings with percussion, piano, and harp. And so that piece that we just heard by Nathan Lincoln de Cusatis is the composer. And the name of the piece, by the way, is A Collection of Sand, one of the first pieces that he wrote, first of a number of pieces that Nathan wrote for us. But that piece was written for single woodwinds, single strings, piano, percussion, and harp. And that's traditionally the ensemble that we build all of our concerts around. In terms of styles of music, it's really hard to pin us down for one style because we've played everything from Mahler to Brahms to, pieces that were just written yesterday. So I think we are pretty adventuresome in that we play most everything that we can get our hands on.
Well, tell us about the last video we're going to hear today, and who is in it.
Yeah, so this piece is from our second album called American Aggregate, called Black Ben by composer Dan Visconti. And this is from a live performance of us performing at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC, and their beautiful concert hall as part of their Live Wire New Music Festival. And one of the great things as you look at this performance for me is that I see so many of my dear musical colleagues that come from all parts of my career and my life. And again, as I mentioned, I kind of let the cat out of the bag early in the interview by saying that those people that you work with, the musicians that you're in school with now in youth orchestra, will be with you for the rest of your life. And so when we look at this video, the violist is one of my dear and closest friends, and now a colleague at the National Orchestral Institute, Tiffany Richardson, who's one of the founders of Sound Impact, who, by the way, has performed for DC Youth Orchestra. I look and see Evan Solomon, our artistic director, and my closest friend playing clarinet, his wife playing violin. I see Brandon Almagro on trumpet, who dates back to my years as an undergrad. And then I see DCYOP faculty members like Derek Powell playing concertmaster and Chandra on horn. So this is really a beautiful illustration of how what we do in music is a thing where we come together, and it happens throughout our lives. And that's one of the greatest parts about doing what we do. I think I mentioned everyone. Did I mention all the DCYO faculty? Aaron, our cello teacher, one of our cello teachers, is performing in this video as well.
That was great. I love how the piece built and then kind of went back to where it started and ended with that gong. Thanks for the heads up that we were about to hear it. Gong
Yeah,
time.
so sorry, I should have told the story before the piece began because it's slightly programmatic, but hopefully everyone caught in the chat that it's about a train that went off a railroad bridge and plunged into the Cayuga River and killed everyone aboard. And this is about the ghosts or the souls rising up from that valley. And you hear that in the sort of fiddling violin duo and the first two players. And then the gong at the end, it's kind of hard to see in this video, but just since I teased it up in the chat, there were two things happening. There was the gong was being bowed with a double bass bow, which gives a certain amount of unique crystalline sound. And then at the very end, he takes the gong off the holder and hits it, and then lowers it into a big bucket of water. And so as the gong goes into the water, you hear that shimmering sound, which is really quite effective. Very colorful piece.
Wow. Well, we'll have to see it live. So I know that Inscape is temporarily living in the virtual world. So Richard, I have two questions for you. One is, if we want to follow you, you pitched NOI, but if they want to follow Inscape and your other side of what you do, how would our viewers do that?
Sure. Follow us. We have a Facebook page as well, Inscape, and an Instagram page. Please follow us there, and visit our website at inscape.org.
Awesome. And now my last question is, we're in a very odd moment in human history, living in this virtual environment. For everyone that's listening today, how can our students, our faculty, our friends, how can our musical community use music to help them through this hard time?
So as musicians, we've lost one part of what being a musician is right now, which is the coming together and the communal aspect of it. But we haven't lost the ability to enjoy music. We are surrounded by music. We are so lucky to be able to turn on our computers or our iPhones and pull up any genre of anything that makes you feel any mood you want to feel. I mean, how amazing is it that you can open Spotify, and if you want to dance, you can dance. If you want to cry, you can cry, and everything in between. So it may have been a long time since you've listened to an album completely, or you've just sat down and spent time listening to music intensively or thoughtfully, or however it is you want to relate to it. The fact of it is that this music is there for you, and it's there for us to get through this time. So some of you may be looking at Facebook and YouTube and seeing everyone's so inspired. Oh, look, I'm playing 20 etudes a day, and I've just done 40 days of the this or that. It's okay if that's not where you are right now. It's okay if putting on a Beethoven symphony, putting on your favorite rock album, putting on your favorite whoever. The other day I went down the hole and watched this amazing guy rap Dr. Seuss books to Dr. Dre. And it was one of the most creative things I've ever seen, and it made me so happy. All this stuff is there. All this stuff is there for you. So find something that fits your mood, turn it on, turn it up, and enjoy.
It's great advice, Richard. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you, Liz. It's great. And I can't wait to see all of you back in the fall.
Us too. So in the coming days, we will post a recording of this interview online, as well as Richard's full listening list with links to all of the performances. We want to know what you thought of today's show, so please take a short survey posted in the chat. We do read each and every survey that comes through. And then we hope that you will join us tomorrow for this week's Listening to Music at 3 p.m. on Zoom. DCYOP's Evan Ross Salmon will explore composers' musical depictions of war and their reflections on and prayers for peace. More information is available on our website, www.dcyop.org. We want to thank all of you who joined us today. Many of you have watched weekly, and we are truly grateful. As you may know, with current stay-at-home orders issued in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and with the closure of most school districts through the end of the year, DCYOP decided to continue our digital learning plan through the rest of the semester. We believe that this is the safest option for our musical community. We created DCYOPresents and Listening to Music as a way to stay in touch with and bring some joy and levity to our greater musical community during this time. Both programs will continue through the end of May, and then DCYOP will transition into summer programming. Like our semester programming, DCYOP will not be holding in-person programming this summer. As our region has not yet experienced its peak of COVID-19, we again believe this is the safest option for our musical community. In place of in-person programming, we will be holding free virtual programming for our students and greater musical community. We will announce these programs soon, and we really hope that you will stick with us this summer. So please stay tuned. Check out our website at www.dcyop.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We will post the remaining 3 DCYO Present guests on all of these mediums, as well as updates on our new summer programming. And so once again, thank you, and please stay safe.